Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It is me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And this week, it's Joe on Joe Illustrated once again. Week on week, we're back. This is, we're going to be covering G.I. Joe 117 today. It's part 2 of Destro Search and Destroy, which is a fabulous little 3-part adventure. Let's get Destro. It's pretty much what's happening here. For you new listeners, welcome aboard. This is the weekly G.I. Joe podcast where I, Joe Slepsky, your host, go over every episode of G.I. Joe Real American, or G.I. Joe the cartoon in sequential order. We did that. We did the DIC stuff, the Sunbow stuff. And now we're working our way through the G.I. Joe Real American Hero comic book in sequential order, page by page, panel by panel, week on week, in excruciating detail. I like to say it's excruciating. But hey, you keep coming back listening every week. And don't think I don't appreciate that, guys, because I really do, especially those of you who are helping to support the show over on Patreon. You went to patreon.com/JoeOnJoePod. And you guys, I got a couple new paid. We got a bunch of new Joes to the show this week. Roderick and Mark, welcome aboard, guys. Art and Matt Anderson and Isaac and Mark B and Andrew, you guys are awesome. We appreciate all of our patrons and Matt, everyone out there, everyone who helps support the show, helps keep the tide rising. It's so welcome and so appreciated. And while you're out there on the internet, make sure you follow me on social at Facebook. It's Joe on Joe Pod. Twitter, Instagram, same thing. Say hello. If you want to send an email to me, you can send me an email at joeandjoepod@gmail.com. I love hearing from listeners, what you think of the show, what you may want to see in the show. If you have any, certainly corrections, because, you know, I'm no wiki. And if I was a wiki, I'm not right all the time. So there's a lot of stuff I miss. But there's a lot of stuff I don't miss, and I'm proud of that. So, like, for example, Justice, where's Tyrone? Who is Roxy? We want answers. We want answers to these not even B plot, C plot questions. Where did Tyrone go? He didn't survive the freighter, yet we got no confirmation on Tyrone's death. We're just hashtag justice for Tyrone and hashtag who is Roxy. I want answers. So before we get some answers on G.I. Joe 117 this week, I'm thinking any Joe stuff in the news. Disappointed in my at a shipment from Target. Ordered a Snake Eyes Super 7 Fun School India version, the variant that they had. And sure enough, they shipped it loose in a plastic bag. So it arrived at my house in terrible shape. Thanks a lot, Target. So there's that. Other than that, not a lot of G.I. Joe stuff, I think, popping this week. Nothing crazy. So I think that RPG is shipping soon. I'm trying to, I feel like I got an email or I saw on social, something like that, where they said that they're going to start fulfilling orders on the, I'm talking about like the tabletop, the D&D style RPG. I think that's going to be shipping soon. So keep your eyes out for that. And we're going to try to do something with that. But after I detailed our and it's fully me, like our difficulty just grasping the rules of the deck building game. I imagine a D&D campaign would be frighteningly terrible. But you never know. We're going to give it a shot. We're going to give it the old college try. There's anything we learned from G.I. Joe, it's you got to try. It's knowing is half the battle, and you got to give it the old go. So this week we're doing G.I. Joe 117. It's got a fabulous Mike Golden cover. Destro busting loose on the front in his gold Iron Grenadier look. It's a little more representational than anything that happens actually in the book, but it's a dynamite cover though. It really looks great and lots of bright colors popping on it. So that's a whole lot of fun. And before we go there,
listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts, and you also love movies. So why not do a podcast It's about not one movie. It's about not two movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show.
You were saying?
We're going to look at comic books that were on the shelf the same month as G.I. Joe 117. So it's cover dated October of 1991. And it would have been actually on the shelf in June of 1991. That's the actual calendar month. So DC, as we've been discussing, is right in the heart of their Armageddon 2001 annual crossover event. They really need to do a nice 2001 omnibus. That would sell well. I think right now there's such a paper shortage going that maybe now is not the time for it. But I hope they do collect that. I hope one day they put all those 2001 stories together and collect them into a big omnibus. That's something I would totally buy, because it's just, you just get story after story of like possible futures, and it's the difference. What I point out, the difference between, and I'm talking like this week, or sorry, this month rather, was Justice League Europe, Legion, L period E period Legion, like it would have been Legion 01, annual number 2, Justice League Europe annual 2. The New Teen Titans annual 7, got the Armageddon treatment. Who else here got an annual list? There's a couple other ones. Flash, probably a Batman one too, I'm assuming. Oh well, Adventures of Superman annual 3, and then actually, we're coming on a culmination of Armageddon issue number 2 came out. So that's actually the wrap up. Detective Comics annual 4. So it'd be cool to collect those. And the difference between like something like that, so where it was it wasn't like an Elseworlds, where Elseworlds being the change point, or kind of even What If, really, because What If and Elseworlds are more of like, here's something and we're going to tweak something in their origin so that it's different than what so what if Superman landed in Russia instead of Kansas, so it grows up and it's red sun, right? What if Batman became a Green Lantern instead of, with the ring found Bruce Wayne instead of Hal Jordan, so it's Batman, Emerald Knight? That's Elseworld. That's What If. That's what What If did. That's what Elseworld did. Armageddon 2001 was great because it said everything up till now is the same. But from here going forward, it was more of an active choice. It was your hero that you've been reading and you've been enjoying so far has the possibility to go bad, and that seemed inherently more dangerous. It was inherently more impactful of the moment, and not just because alternate realities. Obviously, an Elseworld is just another reality, so your hero isn't impacted. But this was. It really had an impact. It really had an emotional connection. So you could have been a huge fan of Hawk and Dove, and all of a sudden you realize, oh no, Hawk is going to become, going to turn into, spoiler alert, he's going to turn into the bad guy. What was his name? Oh, I had it last week. Monarch, like that kind of a thing. Or Superman. From this point on, something bad is going to happen tomorrow. to change him into this evil leader or something like that. And I think that's different. I think that's huge. I think it's a subtle difference in the alt reality kind of genre, which, look at what they're doing with Doctor Strange. Look at what they did with Spider-Verse and the Spider-Man movie and Flashpoint. Everybody's talking about multiverse. It's like people heard of the multiverse for the first time. Meanwhile, all of his comics people are like, yeah, we get it. We all read Crisis, and even guys generations older than us, they were like, we get it. We read every Justice League JSA crossover for the last 30 years, going back to the Flash of Two Worlds, and what was that, 58 or something like that, 59? Like, we comic fans get the multiverse. We get it. This isn't a new concept. Thank you for finally catching up. But that, that concept is really great. And I love that it's possible future danger, which is also, was the appeal of the X-Men too, right? With Days of Future Past, where it was that these guys that and love, they're not different. It's just that it could go really bad for them versus, here's a version if it went bad for them already, but it didn't go bad for them already because they're here and they're doing their own thing. So they survived, they didn't do that. So, yeah, I really dig that. I dig that. And I dig that difference. So Armageddon 2001 wraps up this month. War of the Gods is also cutting a crossover swath through DC as well. This was the Wonder Woman led miniseries that, it touched on. If you weren't getting Armageddon, you were getting War of the God this month. So we touched on everybody. Oh, there's a lot of, and because it's also over in the Justice League, they're in the middle of their breakdowns crossover. So there's a lot of, it's hard to avoid a crossover this month at DC is what I'm saying. Yeah, it's really hard to avoid a DC crossover. Specifically in Batman 470, you've got Maxi Zeus. And Maxi Zeus is such a great 60s villain. It's like the comic book version of, you guys remember King Tut, Victor Buono, the great Victor Buono. It's the comic book version of King Tut, different mythology, of course, but it fits into that mold. It was an Alan Grant creation. Maxi Zeus is a lot of fun. So so that's it for DC.
You were saying?
Now over at Marvel, Alf is reaching 46 issues. Alf, guys. Alf, alien life form from Melmac, our friend Alf, has reached 46 issues. That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. Oh boy. Avengers 340. I've always enjoyed this cover because the perspective is so cool, but the execution of it, there's something about it that just leaves me a little off. But it's so good. It's such a good idea. It's a close-up of the Wasp, but she's standing in front of Cap's chest. So Cap's chest is really large, and there's guns pointing at the Wasp, which in turn are pointing at Cap's chest. And it's always stood out for me, and I like it. It's always stood out for me because it doesn't feel like any other Avengers cover from the time or any other Avengers issue, really. It's almost, I feel like it's design wise, it's just a bit ahead of its time. Like it's something we would have gotten 10 years later. I hope you guys know what I'm saying, or you can picture it. Look it up. It's Avengers 340. It just feels, it's a great cover. It's by Ron Lim. It's a great cover. And it just feels like it's ahead of its time. Like you could tell whose chest she's in front of, but it's weirdly not. I don't know. There's something about the background that, I don't know. I mean, it's no critique, actually no critique on it really, but there's just something about this cover that stands out because it's not like any other Avengers cover that they had done or were doing. And I feel like it's an ahead of its time cover. I really, really feel that way. I like it. I like that cover a lot. Clive Barker, Book of the Damned Hellraiser Companion. For all you Clive heads out there. Issue number 1 was on the stands. Typhoid Mary is hanging out over in Daredevil 297. That is a character, I think, well, they just had her marry Kingpin in the comics now, who's the mayor of New York, and he's about to take a fall, I think, in that Dark Reign miniseries, which has been pretty decent, actually. It's hitting a lot of familiar notes, but it's telling it well enough that there's a lot of crossovers. but I think Zdarsky is doing a decent enough job in the main series, because I'm not reading any of the crossovers. I made a point to. I just enjoy the series, and that's not true. I have the Electric one, but I haven't read it yet. So, yeah, but Dark Reign's pretty good. But she's in that. Typhoid Mare is never. She's never resonated with me. Like I don't think I really ever understood that she was a pyrokinetic. I don't know. When I was a kid, I thought she was just a crazy lady with the half white face, and she would have multiple personalities. And yeah, she's an interesting one. Typhoid Mare is interesting. Of course, G.I. Joe 117. Boom, boom, boom. The Infinity Gauntlet has that awesome Thanos cover where he's standing in the middle of the space, just waving his arms like, come get me. That's a fun cover. I do appreciate that cover quite a bit. Moon Knight. It's a beautiful cover, actually. It's primarily black and white, but it's got some candles burning, and that gives the source of color. Is that it's a Bill Sienkiewicz cover. And this is on the Mark Spector series. And I don't think Sienkiewicz did a lot of covers for that series. You know, he was the actual artist and cover artist for the first Moon Knight series. So it's nice to see him go back to that. If you're not down with Moon Knight, I think in 2 weeks, it's definitely by the end of March, we're getting the Disney Moon Knight show. So dig out your Moon Knight back issues, guys, and cash in. Cash in while the cash in's good. Let's put it that way. Been loyal Moon Knight fans your whole life. Cash in, buy the omnibuy so you still have the stories, and get paid for supporting Moon Knight all these years. NFL Super Pro #1, of course, that's the book of the week. We need to start an NFL Super Pro podcast. Just do like a tight 20 issues, 20 episodes of an NFL Super Pro podcast. That'd be amazing. I don't know. I'd run out of stuff to talk about. Not even 20 issues. I think it only ran 8 issues. Then there was a special. So like a 10 episode tight podcast retrospective of NFL Super Pro, and call it NFL Super Pod. That's it. That's your podcast. It's the NFL Super Pod podcast, where we dig deep into NFL Super Pro. Are we making this? Are we doing this? Are we making this happen? I don't know if we are, but the idea is out there now. Maybe we do. Maybe we do. I don't know. And the biggest, actually, here's the biggest book of the month. 2 big books, actually. Really, 2 big. Well, this was Marvel was relaunching and kind of reinvigorating their X books at the time. So there's 3, to be honest. This was a big month. 3 big months for the X-Men. Uncanny 281, X Factor 71, and X-Men Volume 2 #1 by Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. 281 was important because it introduced Bishop. It had Will Portacio in the art. It was a big deal. Strangely, for the first appearance of Bishop, who he's stuck around. Like, he's not going anywhere. He's been around now for 30 years. Strangely, this book, I think it's just there's so many copies of it. Book's never really taken off in price. But it's a fun book, and Portacio's art is a lot of fun. I remember the time being just so dynamic. I like his stuff, but it gets a little old for me. But this early stuff, I think it still tickles that teenager in me. Which don't tickle my teenager. So X-Men Volume 2, of course, is the Jim Lee, Chris Claremont. And that was the one where it launched with, 5 different covers. But it was all one big picture, so you could get one with just Cyclops and Wolverine on it, one with just Colossus and Storm on it, one with just Magneto, etc. And then the final cover was the big gatefold version of it. That's exciting. That is a book that has gotten a little bit bigger in the last few years, but I think it's pretty much stalled around $10. We sell them for $10, but we have 1 million copies of them. But it's kind of like, I think people expect it to be a little more expensive than it really should be. Not because of importance, just because of the sheer volume. This was, it was the biggest selling book, I think, if memory serves me, for like ever. Like 2 million, something in the millions of copies. Certainly modern age book. It's a ridiculous number of copies that are out there of this book. Then obviously then factor in the multiple covers, etc. And the other big one was X Factor 71, which was the soft reboot of X Factor, where it went from being Cyclops and Jean and the original 5 X-Men, Iceman, Beast, Angel, masquerading as, they hadn't masqueraded as mutant hunters in a while, but it was, that book. Now it was changed to being Havoc, Scott Summers' brother Alex, and Polaris, Lorna, and Strong Guy, Wolfsbane, and they brought in Multiple Man. And this was X Factor as a government organization. kind of a replacement for Freedom Force, which was the old Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And X-Factor, was a government-run organization to go do mutant-esque business for the government. So this was the Peter David, Larry Stroman book. Really, really good stuff. David's a very talented writer. His Hulk stuff is great. And this is also another book that just doesn't, again, people know this cover. They've reprinted it as like one of those dollar reprints. It's an important book in the lineage of X-Men, but it's got almost zero back issue value because they just printed a ton of copies of this. So yeah, so this was a big month for X-Men.
You were saying?
Now, over in the movie theaters, June 1991. Just a handful of movies, not a whole lot of movies, but some big ones. City Slickers, and say what you will, man, City Slickers is a great movie. I loved it when it came out. I remember seeing it in theaters and laughing a lot. I remember watching it a million times on cable. City Slickers is a great movie. It is fun. It's funny. It's funny. It's got a young Jake Gyllenhaal in it. There you go. But it this is Billy Crystal, Daniel Stern, Bruno Kirby. They're middle-aged men going through midlife crisis. They go to the cow ranch or the ranch to be cowhands and ride horses, and they reconnect with themselves. And I would have been 16. I wasn't identifying with that. I was just laughing at it. I think it's a really funny, really smart movie. And of course, obviously, Jack Palance, who he won the Oscar and did the push-ups and stuff for it. I'm not sitting here standing for City Slickers 2, Legend of Curly's Gold, but I will stand for City Slickers. I think City Slickers is great. Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead is one of those movies that holds up in a I remember that kind of movie, and I watched it a ton when it was on middle of the day on HBO a million times kind of movies. It's fun. It's got stupid stuff in it, and you laugh, and and that's it. That's the kind of movie that is. So that came out on the 7th, as well as the huge movie Spike Lee's Jungle Fever. That's a huge movie too. So that's a big Friday. Not that Don't Tell My Mom's a huge movie, but you know what I'm saying. It lasted. It's got some legs, especially in the nostalgia department. Then on the 14th of June, just one movie, which was huge. You remember this was one of the early, I don't mean to say early, because there were a lot of big tentpole, we were 2 years after Batman. But this movie, let's just say this movie followed in the heels of the Batman level promotion, the Dick Tracy level promotion, where, if you remember, and we talked about on the show, those movies, it was all over the place, and it was all you could hear about all summer. And this is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Kevin Costner, directed by Kevin Reynolds, Morgan Freeman, Christian Slater. There were action figures. There were, all the Burger King and McDonald's tie-ins, or, whatever fast food tie-ins. I mean, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was huge. And some of you listeners may not know that. You may be a little young, although I'm feeling the podcast demo on this skews a little older. But if you guys remember, this really was huge. Now it's kind of remembered, a little laughable, because Costner's accent is a little crazy, and it's a little staged, a little hokey. I think it's a fun movie. It's not great. It's never really a go-to watch for me, but it was a massive, massive movie at the time. So there was nothing else to compete against it that week. So then on the next week on the 21st, a Joel Schumacher movie, Dying Young, another movie which is absolutely stands up and stands the test of time and is beloved by probably everyone that's going to hear these two words come out of my mouth. June 21st, The Rocketeer, directed by Joe Johnston, who did go on to direct, he did the third Jurassic Park, but most importantly, he did Captain America, the first Avenger, which, when we all saw that, we were all like big Rocketeer vibes. Of course it was, because he was the director of The Rocketeer. Fabulous movie. I loved this movie the moment I saw it. I watched it a ton. I think it's so great. I think it's the fact that Disney hasn't done more with The Rocketeer is a real shame. It's just a delightful film from top to bottom. All the performances are fantastic, and everything about it is great. Wish fulfillment. Just a guy who strap on a rocket pack and fly around and shoot Nazis. I'm in. Rocket, and then and get the girl who's movie star level, date, you know what I mean, like the beautiful dame. It gets great. Rocketeer is great, absolutely wonderful. So yeah, there you go. And then at the end of the month, a week later on the 28th, there's only one movie too. It's Naked Gun 2.5: The Smell of Fear. Of course, starring notable murderer O.J. Simpson. And there we go.
You were saying?
So we're going to get to G.I. Joe 117.
Now, mass is ready.
It certainly is. It's fitting. Destro going to walk us into his issue. So we said earlier, it's 117. It's got Destro pointing his gun at the reader. Snake Eyes behind him. Flint, Lady J, Baroness, all in action poses, all real dynamic, really good looking. This is Michael Golden coming back to G.I. Joe. Fantastic, really fantastic cover. And you've got, Vipers of all types around him. At the top, it looks like night creepers shooting over the, crawling over the logo and shooting at them. It's a great cover. And I think that the colors on all three of these covers, because of that Destro, that hot pink, red, gold look, the colors make this pop. It's funny. Looking ahead, it's Destro. We'll get to this next week, but it's Destro fighting Cobra Commander, and I feel like Michael Golden was like, I'm not drawing that new version of Cobra Commander with the red face plate. I know, it's a hot topic. Some of you guys like that Cobra Commander with the red face plate. Not this podcaster.
Yo, Joe!
Escape from Castle Destro. In the south of France, Destro flees from Cobra Commander's vendetta with the aid of Chuckles, Zartan, and Billy. So if you recall last time, the Joes in their Tomahawk got shot down, or wounded rather, so they couldn't reach Chuckles and Destro to rescue, and Baroness to rescue them. So Zartan and Billy had stolen one of those Cobra Hind helicopters, those transport ones, and they flew over and they rescued Destro. They were unable to get, and Chuckles, they were unable to get the Baroness. She got captured by Cobra Commander. Larry Hama's on the scripts. Rod Wiggum, pencils. Very welcome, Rod Wiggum. I love his G.I. Joe stuff. So good. Randy Emberlin inks. Also fantastic. Rick Parker letters. Bob Sharon colors. Bobby Chase, editor, and DeFalco, editor-in-chief. And, I don't look ahead on this show. I don't. I take them issue by issue so I can be, hopefully that comes through in the conversation of being kind of surprised by, the cycles of things. But man, I feel like we've been saying Emberlin, Parker, and Sharon for so many months that it's just great. They're like this strong backbone on this book that really unifies it. Both the look, the feel, and just everything about it is kind of grounded by those guys. They've really been on this book consecutively for a long, long time. So that's great. Watch next month. They're like, we all quit. Anyway, so we open with that helicopter escaping, and they're flying over it looks like it's French, a French jet fuel train. So, there's a train carrying one of their cars has jet fuel on it. And as they're flying over it, it's remarked upon that they're running on vapors, and it's too bad because there's a whole bunch of jet fuel right below them. They're escaping from Destro's castle in Scotland.
Yo, Joe!
We see that Billy reminds us that Destro is unconscious because he was knocked out with the Arishikage death touch, and actually what's funny is with a character like Destro, not that you shouldn't remind people of things like that, like oh yeah, this guy in this scene he was knocked unconscious last issue, so because again, I believe in the tenet, every comic could be someone's first comic, so you need to bring them up to speed. But in this case, Destro has a metal face, so it's hard to draw that this guy in the metal face is sleeping because he just has a metal face. So we get a reminder that he's been knocked out. Chuckles is there chatting with Zartan. Zartan's doing the flying on the helicopter. And they remark, and this is just all catches us up that Billy had to knock him out, otherwise Destro would have gone for the Baroness and they all would have gotten caught by Cobra Commander, etc. So he saved all of them. They're running out of fuel, but they realize Destro can fly a helicopter. So if he can fly the helicopter, then maybe they can fix their fuel problem. So Billy uses his Arishikage life touch. I guess it's the reverse of the ninja knockout technique to wake up Destro, and then they fill him on what's going on. And Yo, Joe! In a cool bit of aerial trickery, like this would have been a big, this would have been like a big action scene, like 45 minutes into the movie, if we're telling this as a movie, the big spectacle, half hour in would have been the big fight at Cobra Commanders, and now they need to get away, and so Zartan leaps down as the helicopter's flying over the jet fuel on this train track, and they steal this jet fuel in midair. So that's kind of exciting. This is what this reminded me of? This reminded me of recently we rewatched The A-Team. I know we've talked about that on the show. I like that movie, but it was on something, so I rewatched it, and I do love that scene where they're falling out of the plane in the tank, and they're firing. They're using the shells. They're firing the tank to break their descent to Earth so they don't die. They're using the concussive force from the shells. And that's like this. That's what this scene would have been. A mid-movie, exciting moment, but you're not really fighting bad guys. You're just in a moment where you have to have some excitement. So that's what's cool about this whole setup sequence here. So there's a problem. They have to solve it, and you might as well solve it in the most dynamic way. And while doing so, they're filling us in on why they had to leave Destro, or why they had to leave Baroness, why they couldn't let Destro stick around and save her. Cobra Commander would have killed both of them. And Chuckles basically says, I think I can help us because, he's a scoundrel. He's Chuckles. He's got a lot of contacts. Yo, Joe! Now, earlier, we're going to go back a few hours, and immediately following the explosion of Castle Destro, because that happened too. Remember, Cobra Commander had been tunneling under Destro's castle for quite a while, under the guise of a nearby construction project, and they were trying to trap Destro and Baroness in the castle, and then he was going to blow them up. So now the Joes, whose tomahawk is still kind of on fire, the Joes are landing here, and they're going to get some repairs and kind of see what's going on. We got General Hawk in his updated, like flight suit kind of look, that he would wear the jetpack. It just looks odd. I wish he was just in his jacket, but I get it. He has to match the toy. And the Joes are catching up on what's going on. The Destro was rescued. This was that Cobra Commander's not going to stop until he puts his Lady J now filling us in. Cobra Commander's not going to stop until he puts Destro on the ground. And that the Joes recognize the only way they were ever able to cooperate, make any headways with Cobra without shooting them was through Destro, because Destro's the only rational actor in the Cobra hierarchy. And she's not wrong. Yo, Joe! Now, Big Ben finds the mask in all the rubble, in all the castle rubble. He does find the mask that Chuckles was wearing, as Chuckles was dressed up as McKeith, the gamekeeper of Castle Destro. And so he describes he's a real master of the undercover game. This is going to come in later. So let's just say they're saying, oh yeah, that Chuckles, he's a real master of the undercover game. And he was great as McKeith. But later on in this issue, it's not really on display. So they're all basically this whole this is a two-page sequence. This is setting us up for how are the Joes going to deal with this problem. The problem being one of their guys is out in the wild with Destro, who's being pursued by Cobra. They have to regroup. All their plans went to pot. So what's going to be happening? Because, as Flint says here, the Cobra Commander is going to sick all the international terrorists, organized crime, mercenaries, and freelance ninjas on them. And the only way to counter that would be put our own ninjas into the fray. And that's when Snake Eyes walks out. Now let's look at the storytelling on this. It's awesome. I think in the very first panel, we see Snake Eyes jump out of the plane, or the tomahawk. That's him. He's not drawn in any other panel for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 panels until he's reintroduced walking out of flames in this final panel, bracketed in like a dance line by the other Joes. That's really cool. That shows a lot of great forethought because they set it up that if you look back, yeah, that's Snake Eyes jumping out at the tomahawk, and he's just, he's investigating, he's looking around the ruins, etc., and so on. And then they're able to give him an introduction with this, this badass, looks like it's your show, Snake Eyes panel. And we see, Snake Eyes has the combat knives over his chest, etc. He's kind of got that dog catcher look with the muzzle on the underside of his red visor. This would be the V4? V3? Is this V4 or V3? Hold on. Yeah, this is that V4 look. This is the I always call this one the dog catcher look because he's like he was wearing a muzzle on his face. And the way they're drawing it actually, it's kind of a combo of V3 and V4, where V3 had those trench knives across his chest. V4, if I look closer at the V4 figure doesn't have those trench knives. And then 2 more years later, in 93, we get that, I think it's specifically like the Ninja Force G.I. Joe, where he's got like the blue belts and everything. Man, those arms are real awkward on that one. But yeah, so this is really the way they're drawing them. It's kind of a combo of V3 with the trench knives, but with the accoutrement and the face mask of V4. So it's a good look.
Yo, Joe!
Also, we get an ad here for Spiderman, the Spider-Man Sega Genesis 16-bit game. I was so excited when they started coming out with, I know we've talked a little bit about this with the X-Men NES game and stuff, but man, when they started coming out with like superhero video games, holy cow. You see, like, to see people like Hobgoblin and Lizard and Sandman and Electro and Kingpin, Venom and all these games, it was like, it was just awesome. Like, cause there was that Spider-Man Atari game and there was a Superman game, like there were games, but now these games were around long enough where they're dipping into these, into his rogues gallery and really bringing off this B. I think it was always the B characters that always got me the most excited about those games. Like when they did the X-Men Sega Genesis game and like Gambit, Nightcrawler, and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So now in the North Atlantic, Cobra Commander is heading towards the Arbco Valdez, of course named after the Exxon Valdez, which crashed and destroyed the environment right around that time, memorialized in the great water world, of course. And this is the Arbco Valdez, so that's very funny. And he's landing on that, and he's getting updates on what's going on. I'm sorry, and I don't mean this to blame Wiggum on how Cobra Commander looks, but this outfit, this helmet situation with the red face thing, they got to work that out because it looks like the gold is supposed to be like, I think on the figure the gold is supposed to be like a hat and the red is supposed to be like a semi-transparent face mask, right? But the way it's drawn, it's over exaggerated, so it's almost like he's looking through a blast shield. There's no way he can see what's going on. And I don't think that's how that toy is supposed to function. But I don't think they know that yet. They probably only have like rough sketches of what the toy is going to look like. They may not actually have the toy in hand to use as reference. So it's not coming off well. And then the like Michelin Man middle, this, I don't know how long they keep him in this, but man, I may harp on this forever. Anyway, he's landing, and we do see the Baroness fight back, which is great. Remember last time I was worried that it was going to be kind of like the last time Baroness got held prisoner and she was on the top of the HISS tank and just ignored for 3 issues until they get into a cat fight, but that's not the case here. She's fighting away. She's kicking these Vipers off, and it's great. She even says I should rate at least a Crimson Guardsman as a security escort as she kicks these Vipers in the face.
Yo, Joe!
And then Cobra Commander belts her one, really does, and then kicks her right in the baby maker, like for real, just kicks her right in the midsection. And so he's not holding any. And some alley Vipers show up, and he instructs the alley Vipers to to take her down to the brig and prep her for the brainwave scanner. brainwave scanner gets a lot of use in G.I. Joe, and I love it, but I do think over the years, especially, I know it's been used a lot recently. It's just used a lot. Like, it's used a lot like Cerebro is used a lot post X-Men movies. Do you remember with X-Men, Cerebro was the thing that would occasionally be used, and it was just a tool. It was just a thing. And then they did it in the X-Men movie, and then all of a sudden everyone and their brother who didn't know the X-Men were like, well, when is he going to use Cerebro? And real X-Men readers were like, well, he doesn't need Cerebro. It just helps him find people. He tracks them down, and then they go do their thing. And they're like, no, but in the movie, it does everything. So now in the comics, Cerebro had to become a thing, and it was Cerebro was this, and Cerebro was that, and then Cerebro came alive, and Cerebro. And it's like, you can't just have a tool anymore. It has to become a thing. It has to become the sentient thing. And that's kind of what the brainwave scanner is here. Like, where it was a tool, and then it got used for this, and then it got used for that, and now it's imprinting clones, and then it's this, and then and just never going to go away. And I'm just saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder. But here we are. They're going to strap her into the brainwave scanner, and Cobra Commander is outreaching to every single mercenary within that they can reach. $20 million in cash to get Destro. Let's look at these two pages, guys. There's great symmetry on these two pages. So the way the layout is such that it's like it doesn't. It would work great if they were face-to-face ones. So if page 4 and page 5 were sharing a spine, you would end it with Snake Eyes in the center, focused as like here's who the Joes are going to send after to rescue the guys on the run. And then the same thing on this page. Now these two pages are face to face, page 8 and page 9, and it ends with Cobra Commander in the middle, just like Snake Eyes. So do yourself a favor, kind of pull the page up and put those little parallels to each other, and it works really nicely. So it's like Snake Eyes is on the go, and then Cobra Commander is going to be on the go. It's good. It's really good.
Yo, Joe!
So now this is a fun part of this actual issue. We just check in on every degenerate that Larry can think of and Rod can draw. And so we go to France, and there's a bunch of mercenaries in just a dirty French bar. And they get this sacre bleu, 20 million in American dollars. They get this a wanted poster. It comes over the fax machine in over the Cobra line. So the Cobra has an extensive network of fax machines throughout all the dive bars in all the world. Of all the bars in all the world, Cobra had a fax machine in this one. And we go to Beirut, and you get the same thing, except not a fax machine. It's tied to a brick and thrown through a window to a guy named Faoud. Now that's a different, because wasn't the guy in the desert named Faoud that they killed? I feel like that was the same name. We need to get a different name there. And it's tied to a brick, and it's also a wanted poster for Destro.
Yo, Joe!
Oh, we need to point out, pardon me, back on that last page, I love this detail. The guy in the bottom right panel in Beirut is wearing an E.T., like extraterrestrial E.T. Steven Spielberg hat. What's amazing is it's 1991, and he's wearing an E.T. Steven Spielberg hat. And why is that amazing? Because, especially at the time, and I don't know if they did this on, this has obviously drew it on purpose, but I feel like what he's saying is, movies and pop culture. Oh, that's my dogs joining here. They agree. Takes years to catch up, especially in this case. So these guys are so behind the times, as far as socially behind the times, that he's still wearing an ET hat, or he just got this ET hat, or he got it as like hand-me-down US stuff, and now he's wearing it. It's great. Oh, and I do need to shout out frequent podcast guest and maybe unofficial mascot, my dog Mary Jane Watson. She's rolling a cone head this week. She's got a little tooth issue. So shout out to frequent Joe on Joe guest Mary Jane Watson. And by guest, I mean interrupt her with dinner, Mary Jane Watson. Hope you feel better, because I know you're a frequent listener of the show. You're almost on every week with your barking and your scratching. So we also now check in Zurich, where we see the Night Creepers. And remember, the Night Creepers are like, they run themselves like a, like a business. So they're in a board meeting, and there's a bunch of Night Creepers in this board meeting, and they're voting on whether or not they're going to go after Destro, and they all agreed to go after a Destro indeed.
Yo, Joe!
And in the south of France. But now this is actually the Joe. So these aren't, it is going to tie in, but this is actually the Joe. So this is Chuckles and Zartan and Billy and Destro. So I guess not the Joes, but those guys. It's the guys on the run, which makes sense because they were following that French oil tanker, right, with the gasoline. So that was a tip off that that's where they were heading. So now they're in the south of France. They're at a La Salle Auto. It's like a junkyard place. And it's Michel, who is apparently a guy that in the past has ratted out Chuckles, but Chuckles is okay because, you know, hey, he's useful to him. And I love that Chuckles is smiling apropos throughout this entire, he's always smiling because that's great. Like especially a guy named Chuckles, obviously, but you know, he's face man from the A-Team. You know, he's everything is going to be okay. You know, so he basically says to his quote unquote friend here, like, hey, you know, I got a helicopter. We need some cash and a car. We need to make our getaway. You know, you're going to help us out, right? And so they swap out this assault helicopter for a fast car. And so, you know, do we got a deal or not?
Yo, Joe!
So they get 20,000 francs and a 65 Renault. And they're on their way. Now, Michel, dirtbag, immediately rats them out. Immediately calls Faoud, who we saw in the earlier one over in Beirut, and he alerts them that the guys on the run are in this car. And Billy points out that guy's going to fink on him in a second, and Chuckles counts on it again, smiling the whole time. And this is where I'm just going to point out, for a guy named Chuckles. Now he's in this case, he is counting on them to rat him out, to kind of thing. But Destro is not in disguise, still wearing his gold. Zartan, master of disguise, not in disguise, still dressed as Zartan. That noise you hear, by the way, that's Mary Jane trying to scratch her ear through a plastic cone. Listen, I'm not saying our mascot's the brightest, but she gets the job done. And Chuckles dressed as Chuckles, and Billy dressed as a ninja. So no one is trying to disguise themselves, and you have literally two people involved. Half of the party here consider themselves masters of disguise. No disguise.
Yo, Joe!
Now, over in New York City, we're going to check up on Storm Shadow, because it's been about an issue and a half since we've caught up on Storm Shadow. So we need to find out what Storm Shadow's up to. And you can hear that sarcasm in my voice. And he's heading to it's a Cuban Chinese place. And I think this is where Softmaster used to crib out, if I recall. But now Softmaster had a like a bodega. This is a restaurant. So my brain is trying to rack where have we seen this before. But it's not Softmaster's bodega. But it is. I do think it's we're nearing the Softmaster territory, as we're about to see. Storm Shadow sneaks in and through this. Oh, you know what? And there's yeah, no, it is. No, it is. It's totally. Yeah, it's totally. It's interesting because he goes through the same bolt hole that Snake Eyes did when the restaurant was shot up in, was it 26? So that's 100 issues earlier. 90 issues earlier. Yeah, so that's the bolt holes he's going through. I thought it was more of a bodega. Anyway.
Yo, Joe!
So this is where Softmaster used to crib. And Storm Shadow is like, hey, I know you're in the shadows. Come on out. And we are introduced for the first time to the G.I. Joe Ninja Force. We've got Tabang. I'm going to call it Tabang. Jibang, Tabang, I think it's Tabang, TJBANG, I think it's Tabang, And he is a former disciple, and this is great because Storm Shadow's filling us in, the reader filling us in on who these guys are. And I like it. They're all drawn in shadow too, which is great because it is in the dark. They're not breaking that rule in order to get the colors, because these guys had some distinctive colors going on the action figure. But I like that they don't break that rule just to introduce them. It says, to Bang, you were a former disciple of the mystic swordsmith Onihashi, and you are sworn to an oath of silence. That means he must have known Zartan, right? And then you are called Nunchuck. So now we meet Nunchuck, a student of the Blind Master. Rest in peace. And he says, and my Nunchuck style is called the Screaming Whirlwind. Now, so I grew up calling them Nunchucks. But I think it's, when he says, I think it's like, is it Nunchaku? Like my Nunchaku style or Nunchucka style? I think it's Nunchaku style. Feels right. I don't know. I apologize if it's offensive, but I think it would be his style is nunchaku, and the weapon is a nunchuck. I don't know. That's what we called it when we used to swing them around and hit ourselves in the face. And then we get Dojo, the talkative one. He says he learned. It's funny that Storm Shadow introduces the other two. Then when we get to Dojo, Dojo introduces himself, which is just a great subtle shift on Larry's part to show personality. And because he calls himself, I'm Dojo, the talkative one. I learned my craft in this very basement under the tutelage of Softmaster.
Yo, Joe!
We had a nice Toy Biz ad for the X-Men action figures. Man, was I so excited for those. I was a little old for them, but I did get a Wolverine, and I had an Apocalypse. Or did I have a second? I had a Wolverine from this run, and I think I had a second run Apocalypse. I think that's all. But man, was I excited that they were doing X-Men action figures. That was a big deal. That was a big, big deal. And so we get more of Storm Shadow fighting them, and we, it's in a lot of introductions and catching the reader up to speed who they are. This whole issue actually is a midpoint issue. There's not a lot of pivotal stuff that happens. It's all set up. It's all setting up the chase. So we had the big explosion and the big here's the adventure that's going to happen is we're going to go after Destro. That was in the first issue. This is now setting the stage for how it's going to continue. The chase goes on with some action beats in the middle, and then we get some resolution in the third issue, next issue. So that's what's happening. But in the middle of this like sparring match, as Storm Shadow's holding his own here, his phone rings, and he answers it, and it is it's an operator saying, "May I speak to Mr. Arishikage?"
Yo, Joe!
And here we go. In the middle of this is a call 1-900 number, 1-900-288-X-Men, and battle the X-Men's deadliest foes. I don't recommend anyone call this number because who knows what it is today, but did anyone call this number back then? I know I wanted to. I absolutely know I wanted to. And I believe this was, like, you called and they would say, like, use Iceman's power, and if you hit it in the right moment, Iceman would shoot his power and you'd win. But if you were too slow, it would go like, you lost, want to play again? And then it would charge you more money. But it was $1.75 for the first minute and 75 cents each additional minute. Maximum call time. Actually, that's interesting. Maximum call time is 4 minutes. So it'd be like what was that? Be like a $5 call just to hear somebody tell you all about how your phone beep helped save the X-Men. It's got an Eric Larson picture associated with it. Anyway, Tommy gets a phone call, speaking of phone calls, and it's Snake Eyes calling him, and he just speaks in like Morse code. So it was D dot, D dot, and then it click, he hangs up on him. So it's Snake Eyes giving him the Arishikage, identifying himself as Snake Eyes with the Arishikage symbol as dashes and dots. And the operator says it's a collect call from Mr. Hebime, or Hebime, Hebime, at the Continental Hotel in Beirut. So that tells Storm Shadow that he's needed at the Continental Hotel in Beirut by Snake Eyes. He says Hebime or Hebime translates roughly from Japanese as Snake Eyes. And, it's the Arishikage clan, and it's a summons. Now, so they need to go to, so he's going to take this ninja force, the christened Ninja Force, and they're going to go on their first mission to Beirut.
Yo, Joe!
Over in Marseille, I don't speak French. That informant, that Chuckles' quote unquote friend, ratted them out based on their car. The terrorists, some of the thugs have found them. So it's outside of it's parked outside of a bistro. So they go in, masks on, guns blazing, guns pointed rather. And as they do, it's the Corsican Brotherhood, which is the mafia, Italian mafia. So the French mafia runs into the Italian mafia, the BTF, and
Yo, Joe!
they get into a firefight. So it was all a setup to throw people off their scent. So that's why Chuckles was okay with that guy ratting him out. But when you get to the boat, they're actually on a boat in the background, steaming out to the to open waters. They're still not in disguise. they're not in disguise, and they're cornering themselves on a slow moving freighter. So all anyone has to do is find out that they're on this freighter, and they've got nowhere to go because they've essentially freighted themselves into an aquatic corner here. While it's a great maneuver, as Destro says, a classic maneuver, Chuckles, set one pack of pursuing hounds on the other. We quickly see
Yo, Joe!
that they're now cornered on this boat, and a bunch of night creepers show up, and it's a Cobra attack. It's not a Cobra attack helicopter, but it is an attack helicopter, and it's all the night creepers. They jump out. The Joe team murders them all, which is pretty great. Billy stabs a dude. Zartan throws a guy off the side. Destro's shooting all of them in every place possible. He even says, did you really think that if I were alone, a mere half dozen of you could take me?
Yo, Joe!
And, as they're getting away, that helicopter is going to tell everyone that they're, that they're on a boat. So, yeah, our ninjas died, but the Joes are on, or the Joes, I keep saying the Joes, the fugitives, rather. They're on the boat, but before he can get that phone call off, Destro lights it up with a wrist rocket. And that helicopter crashes into the sea. So, there you go.
Yo, Joe!
Now, we quickly check in Beirut, and the hotel where Snake Eyes is at, and it's Mr. Room Service, Mr. Habim. There's no answer, and it's a bellhop, and then two room service people, a man and a woman, and they're whispering to each other that no, he's not answering. Could he be asleep? They're pulling out their submachine guns. They're about to bust down the door, and we see on the other side of the door, Snake Eyes is waiting, with his sword drawn and his Uzi ready to rock and roll for some action. So it's really good. Like it's to be concluded. It's a really good,
Yo, Joe!
really strong middle chapter of an adventure. It really is, because it's got enough action to keep you satisfied while progressing the plot, introducing some fun. It's like that movie, Shoot 'Em Up? No. The movie with another movie by the guy who directed A-Team. The movie with Chris Pine as those assassins that they're all going after. They're all going after the guy from Entourage. That's a really good description of a movie, Joe. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. It's a great setup issue that also has a lot of really good action. So I like it. I really like it. I like that they don't really bog it down with any B plots. Like, we're in the middle of this Destro 3-parter. That's all we're going to get. That's all we need to get. We don't need to set up other plots and set up other storylines going forward. You also introduced to the Ninja Force. That's cool. We also have a Firefly dossier here, a 2-page Firefly thing, and it's got the new look Firefly. Not a huge fan of the new look Firefly. It looks really weird. It looks like a ninja crocodile, but it is drawn by Ron Garney, who you know I'm a fan of. It ends with talking about him being locked and buried in the freighter, which is weird because we think he's dead. So this is kind of telling you, the reader, that of course he's not dead. He's Firefly. He's going to come back. And then we got Postbox from the Pit. We've got letters from Thomas Wheeler, Ryan Dumperth, and Alan White out of Tacoma, Washington. Ryan Dumford out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. I got family out there. Shout out Fort Wayne. And Thomas Wheeler from Tucson, Arizona. And this is great. Ryan Dumperth is asking about Cool Breeze. He says, since you knocked off Cool Breeze, will he appear as an action figure, or did you just create him to keep the death count rising? And they wrote, now Larry used to write these. It doesn't look like Larry's writing this, because it says when Cool Breeze entered the comic, Larry probably didn't know he was going to die. It just happened. I don't know. I mean, yes, he does write issue to issue. We know that, and I believe him. But Cool Breeze always seemed destined to not last too long. Anyway, that's it, gang. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed talking to you. We'll see you next week. Now you, Joe. Joeing is half the battle.